Welcome to my channel. This is Bruce the Boss, and they are already rounding up Australian citizens from their home and segregating them from the rest of the population. That's the topic of today. And before we get into that story, again, if you are new to the channel, go ahead and smash on that subscribe button, like this video, comment on this video, and also smash on the notification bell, as I've been recently notified that YouTube is once again messing with the channel. And so if you are subscribed, you may not be getting the notifications. And if you notice that, I've been posting videos every single week, at minimum of 2, every now and then, every other day. And so go ahead and smash that notification bell to try to fight that messed up, broken system where they seem to be disabling notifications. I'm also been told by one of my subscribers that they didn't even see me on their subscriber list. They can find my channel another way by looking up a specific video, but when they look at their list of subscribers, I'm not showing up there. So there's a lot of censorship being made by YouTube. Not too sure if it's intentional or not, but that just is very weird. So go ahead, enter the smash on that notification bell, and again, go ahead and subscribe to this channel to fight against YouTube censorship or big tech censorship that is not in favor of anything that doesn't go with the main narrative. Now, on to the story. I've already talked about this before and some of my concerns. Let's go ahead and watch this video from 9 News in Australia, New South Wales. Let's roll.
Checking in on a positive case at Graystanes, police in full PPE as they break the news to Gabriel Chalhoub. He's off to a health hotel.
I went and got tested for peace of mind. Didn't get a text message that I'm positive or negative, and about a week after, I've got police calling me. So I don't know, maybe it's a mix-up.
Confused but happy to comply, the concreter heads off for an indefinite stay.
All good? Thank you. Beautiful.
So you heard it right there from the horse's mouth, straight from 9 News, and reporting from Graystanes, which is part of New South Wales, which is a suburb just outside of Sydney, or just west of Sydney. You had a citizen of Graystanes, Gabriel, who was minding his own business, was confiscated for, I guess you can say, quarantine. Now, I did a video on this last week as it pertains to the Center for National Resilience, which is a facility I also happily named the COVID camp. Go ahead and check that video out if you haven't done so already. And I did admit in that video, they're building this facility for, as they say, travelers who are testing, who are coming into the country, a place for them to go, because the hotels right now, they say, are not equipped to truly quarantine, because currently the current policy is if you're traveling into the country of Australia, you will be required to do a mandatory 14-day quarantine in a hotel, but the hotels aren't adequately equipped to maintain any leakage of the virus if an individual happened to have it or test positive. So the logic is, let's create a whole facility in the outskirts of town here in Melbourne to facilitate and or house these individuals, as opposed to putting them in these health hotels. And I was concerned, and I was proven right, that the government would potentially overreach and not just extend this to those who are traveling, because as you heard in that case, Gabriel was not traveling. He was not coming in from out of the country. He was a citizen who was just doing his due diligence and being responsible and getting tested to ensure that he did not have it, assuming that he was either recently at an event and or outing that where he may have been exposed, or just as a regular precaution, because I tried to look him up online on LinkedIn. It said, and by his physique in the video, personal trainer. So if that's the same Gabriel Chalhoub, then he runs a business that is dependent on him being healthy, and that he needs to report any adverse medical conditions to any of his clients. I digress. Citizen just doing his due diligence, took the test, never heard peep for about a week regarding his results, whether it was positive or negative, despite the fact that you should be able to get a rapid response within at least 72 hours, or at most 72 hours, at least 24 to 48. But instead of giving him his results, showing him what the conclusions were, and even allowing him to take the test again, just in case if it was a false positive, he gets a call from the police and a knock on his door saying, you need to come with us to this health hotel. So for all those individuals who are trying to say the Center for National Resilience was just for, and they're saying it's just for travelers, that's not where they're going to end it with. I was right, and this is my proof, in that they are going to possibly extend this to anyone who can test positive, and there doesn't appear to be much say about it. And the problem with that, while Gabriel was perfectly fine with complying, going along, he wasn't fighting. What about those millions of individuals out there in Australia who don't want to comply because they don't feel either A, that the results are accurate, or B, they want to have the freedom to self-quarantine at home, the freedom to choose how they want to exercise the quarantine. All right. I've gotten some, and I welcome any and all opinions on this. No, I'm not an Aussie. I'm not a native Australian, but I am very much familiar with what is going on. I'm following the events closely, whether it be on 9 News, whether it be Sky Australia or Sky News Australia. I am following this, and I have a lot of friends in Melbourne, or I have a lot of subscribers as well as followers who are keeping me up to date on what's going on. I'm following the situation very closely, and to quote the Dr. Martin Luther King, a threat to injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I'm going to comment on where I see injustices potentially. I'm not going to be like LeBron James and say I'm going to fight for justice no matter where it is, and then kowtow to an organization like the Chinese Communist Party that has serious and justice violations and say nothing. I'm going to comment, and there are millions out there in Australia who agree that this is not right, and they deserve a voice too. Although I do appreciate any Australians who have a difference of opinion, it's definitely welcome. But I definitely want to try to give voice to the voiceless and concerns for the other millions who don't agree. For instance, I had someone comment on said video regarding the Center for National Resilience saying, hey, 67% of Aussies are in support of these very controlling, if not authoritarian measures or restrictions. But what about the other 33%? Australia is made up of about 25 million people. That means that about 8.5 million people are not for it. And we've seen the marches in the thousands hitting the street against these lockdown measures, saying that they're going way too far. This is not right. We have rights. We should be free. Something doesn't smell right. They deserve a voice too. They do not deserve to be trampled on just because they may not make up the overwhelming majority, in fact, 67% is not that big of a majority. So you have nearly half of the citizenry who are not in support. They deserve a voice. But again, welcoming all voices. Another cause of concern is this virus is never going away. All right. This is something that you're just going to have to learn to live with. You cannot lock down and restrict your way out of this. In fact, as I recall, the World Health Organization last made a recommendation against national lockdown, saying that the so-called cure is worse than the virus itself or the disease. And it's not going to really solve anything because you're just delaying the inevitable. Because again, it's not going away. There are vaccines out there that individuals can take, but then with this new Delta variant, it definitely decreased the efficiency and or effective rate of all of the vaccines out there, including the Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson. But then we have to take a look at, this is not the Great Plague. This is not the Spanish flu. This is a virus that does not affect all individuals indiscriminately. It is very discriminative against certain demographics. It's just a fact. While yes, any and everyone can get this, it's a very infectious virus, especially the Delta variant, which is even more contagious than the original. And then you have the Delta Plus, which is even more contagious apparently than chickenpox. But the potency of these variants are not greater than the original. And they're just more contagious, but being more contagious doesn't mean more severe, more deadly. In fact, deaths have been going down rapidly. But the demographics of who are at most risk of this have not changed, regardless of where you are in the world. United States, Australia, UK, Sweden. While the overwhelming majority of positive cases are young individuals between the ages of 20 and 39, the overwhelming majority of hospitalizations and or deaths around the world is anywhere between the ages of 77 and 83, which is also coincides with the average life expectancy. In fact, hospitalizations are also made up of a majority of people in their 50s and over, despite the fact that that same demographic is the overwhelming minority of test positive cases, which means individuals who are young and healthy, 49 years old and under, are getting it in greater droves of numbers, but are not falling to severe symptoms, whether they got the jab or not. In fact, that this is a virus that for the average healthy individual under the age of 50 has a 99.99997% survival rate. That's a lot of nines after the decimal point. But that number definitely increases the older you get. Also, 90% of all deaths around the world during the course of this pandemic have occurred in countries where obesity is a major issue. CNBC has also reported here in the United States specifically that over 80%, or 78% to be exact, of all hospitalizations are individuals who are overweight and or obese. This is an issue involving mostly elderly and or those who are unhealthy and or with severe comorbidities. I would also throw in those who are severely immune compromised, maybe suffering from COPD, they were a smoker, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes. If you come with a wide range of comorbidities and or pre-existing conditions that make you an unhealthy individual, yes, your conditions are going to be more severe. In fact, all of the so-called regrettable COVID patients that now regret not getting the jab, look at them, they're either all old and overweight, morbidly obese in a lot of cases. These are the individuals who are succumbing more so, not individuals who look like me. And I don't just mean my skin color, because apparently in the United States, a lot of African Americans are testing positive at a higher rate than other ethnic groups and potentially coming down with more severe cases. But let's look at most Black Americans as far as their overall health. They eat like crap. They either eat a whole lot of processed food, fast food, and or even those who do cook, soul food is mostly comprised of fried chicken, chitlins, or just a lot of love for pork, and baked macaroni and cheese, which is far superior than that Kraft crap that you get in a box, but as much better as baked macaroni and cheese is, there's a lot of cheeses in that. Cheese that clogs the arteries and raises up your chances of, again, high blood pressure and or, again, diabetes. So the very foods that most Black people eat, whether it's soul food or fast food and or just a lot of sugary processes, food makes one generally unhealthy. But so long as you take care of yourself, again, you're young, you exercise, you're not at great risk. In fact, this is like anything, the average case for an individual of my demographic under the age of 40 even, we can even get more specific, in between, under the age of 40, at least over the age of 5, it's like a bad cold. They get it. They are largely more likely to be asymptomatic, as much as an 88% chance, as all random studies of a sample size of a population has shown. As much as 88% are usually asymptomatic anyway, with the next largest group being about 6-7% mild symptoms, nothing severe. So the overwhelming majority of individuals under the age of 49 and under, especially the younger you get in your 30s and 20s, is largely going to be asymptomatic, and then at worst mild symptoms for maybe a couple of days, at worst a week, and then you get over it like a bad cold and or flu, and then you kick it. Hospitalization is not that high among young individuals, jab or not. But on top of that, there is, again, the jab. But this is irregardless of the Delta. So you cannot really justify these draconian measures in light of the evidence, in light of the fact that, again, not everyone is the same. You need to focus your resources on those demographics that are mostly at risk, i.e. the elderly, those who are overweight and or obese, or those with other great comorbidities. I mean, I label obesity and or just being generally overweight, and I don't just mean like the traditional BMI metrics overweight, because a lot of athletes are by that metric overweight. I mean like really overweight but not yet obese. That comes with its own host of severe health issues in and of itself. So they deserve their own category. But that also includes, a third category of just other comorbidities. Focus on those individuals. Make sure that those individuals get the jab so long as they can do so and they're not at risk, because there are those who, depending on their medical condition, really cannot get the jab, whether it's due to allergic reactions, pregnant, or they're just so severely immune compromised, it's not going to make a difference anyway. So focus on protecting those individuals, but a lot of these measures just are not justifiable based upon the risk factor for the population at large. I say look at Sweden. They have not done any of the measures that Australia and most countries have done. No major lockdowns, no major mask mandate, very, 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 very few restrictions, i.e. at one point you couldn't have gatherings of more than 50 people, which was far more than any country that was saying rules of 6, i.e. Boris Johnson. And yet their hospitals or facilities were not overwhelmed. And of all of the deaths that did occur, again, 97% of those all were people over the age of 65, 82% of those occurring in nursing homes. Again, the demographic is elderly. Focus on those who are most at risk. That's not everyone, but they're treating everyone the same and trying to justify these draconian measures, and it's only going to get worse. And so I'm speaking for those who are feeling oppressed, like this is a dictatorship, like they're being fed a false story and or something is just being overblown or overhyped, and they're watching their futures slip away slowly but surely, because it all begins with we're doing this for your own good. And before you know it, they're rounding you up for not being compliant, for not being vaxxed, for testing positive, despite the fact that there are high numbers of false positives noted around the world. And so you can be indefinitely detained, as they mentioned there in the video. He wasn't just being held for a couple of weeks. They said indefinitely. Now you can try to make the argument, well, no, it's not really going to be indefinite. It's just going to be a couple of weeks. Then why didn't they just say 14 days? Why didn't they just say until he gets better, which he didn't appear to be sick at all, and he really should have had the right. Now, for those Aussies who don't mind complying to certain rules, that should be your choice. But that should not be forced upon the other 33% or whatever the most accurate number is of individuals who are seeing their freedom stripped away and not even having the right to, if they want to, stay at home to self-quarantine. Or for that matter, if you're not free to go visit your grandmother at her own home, if she's crying, depressed, and alone, if you don't have the freedom to console a loved one who's on the other side of other side of town or in the next town over, you are not free, and you are under a dictatorship that is hitting you with thousands of dollars in fines for just being around, driving around on your own. You don't even have to be at a mass gathering, but a lot of these measures or restrictions, whether it be in Victoria, whether it be in Melbourne, Sydney, they are saying you are not allowed to be out. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, was it Blackwater or Background Church? There's a church in Sydney, Australia, where they just said a pastor had an illegal church service the other night, where you're not even free to practice your own faith, which is a cornerstone here in the United States of freedom of religion, freedom of religious expression. You're not free to practice your own faith because of our austere rules. You are not free, and that's very concerning and where that can lead to. But that's all I have for the video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to support the message, get the voice out there, get the concerns out there. If you got to make sure you're paying attention to what's going on, because if you don't know what's going on, you won't know to fight. And if you don't fight for what you love and cherish now, i.e. your freedoms, you will have plenty of time to mourn for how bad things have gotten later, or at least for future generations, which I'm pretty certain we don't want that to happen. So subscribe to this channel, like this video, comment on this video, share this video. We need to stop some of these more authoritative and or fascist policies from going forth, because if it happens in one place, it can happen in another. This is Bruce the Boss, and I'm out.